we're on. Boom. Everybody tuning in to the Omniverse Comics Guide, thank you for once again tuning in, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening over Apple Podcast or Spotify. Don't forget, as we begin, hit that subscribe button, like the show. All of those things help us make better content for you. Speaking of better content, we have got a great guest today. First time, finally we did it. She is a cartoonist, cover artist, illustrator, Joe Shuster Award winner in 2020, favorite cartoonist nominee for Sequential Magazine in 2022. It's our friend Becka Kinzie. Becka, we did it. Welcome to the show.
Yay! Yay, we made it.
We made it. How's it going? How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm okay. I'm enjoying this nice summer weather that we're getting. So on the weather side, everything's a thumbs up.
Okay. I'm kind of melting over here. Like the heat and I are not friends, but that's okay.
Do you have air conditioning where you are in your studio? Is that your studio that you're in?
Yeah. But I think the air conditioning, it's all set up, thankfully. So I think tonight it's gonna have to come on, man. Like, especially for my dog. Like, she has her thick fur coat. You know, we both have fur babies, right?
Right.
It's just making sure they're comfy.
What kind of dog do you have?
She's a Labradoodle.
Okay.
So, but she's got more lab in her than the poodle part. So she's got she kind of looks like a Muppet, but her fur is fully grown, like a Muppet / Wookiee. So
that's great.
Yeah.
I got Colby the Labrador. She's my senior pup. Cute as a button, but when they get older, they're like puppies again, right? You gotta every move they make, like, oh no, are you okay? What do you need?
So, yeah, mine's a senior too. Like this week, because of the fireworks, she hurt her tail.
Oh no.
Yeah, but it's better now. So we're like, oh no, what's wrong? But just some aspirin and she's good. But
yeah,
we're good now. So
I've got one who makes me think she's living in a desert. She's always looking for water because she's got like a condition where she's always thirsty. Mm-hmm. Even if she's had enough to drink, it's always like, okay, do I give you something or should I? So, but we love them. Do anything for them.
Exactly.
We could do a podcast on our dogs, I think.
Yeah, we probably could.
We probably could. But we're here to talk about your art, your work, your comics, about you, and just have general chit chat. So let's get into it. A lot of people have told me you should get Becka Kinzie on. I think you guys will have a great conversation. I'm not sure why. Like Sam always said that. I think even Martin brought it up to me. Martin Slam Duncan. Shout out Martin.
Yeah.
But it's nice to finally get the opportunity to do it. So let's go right to the beginning, since it's your first time on the show, our first time podcasting together. Where did you grow up, and how did you fall in love with comic books?
I grew up in Kitchener, Waterloo. Pretty much been here my whole life. And comics, I guess it just happened naturally, you know? Like, there's always been artists in my family, except the prominent ones were all died by the time I was a baby.
Oh, no.
So I'm like, couldn't ask for advice, except for like my granddad, who's, you know, my great grandparents were his parents. And so any tips I got from him, and also from one of my aunts, who's also an artist, but she lives abroad. So other than that, like, I always loved to draw, and comics and cartoons are what I gravitated towards too. And like the whole comics, it started with newspaper comics, and then it evolved into the manga and the indies, and like some Marvel and DC thrown in there, usually in graphic novel form. I think to this day I only have one Marvel comic book floppy.
What is it?
That's a lie. I have more since sorry, but it's a Spider-Man. Of course I don't have it on me right now, but it was the issue where they first announced the Spider-Man movie, like the one with Tobey Maguire.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So
it's from I'm guessing childhood, or like a very young memory where you had this comic. So do you keep it for sentimental reasons?
I do. It's coming apart, sadly, but I'm like, I must preserve you.
That's
and
great.
I don't think I could sell it, just because it's the nostalgia factor, and because it came from a well-loved comic book shop in Kitchener at the time. And I'm embarrassed to admit I get the name of it kind of mixed up. It's like Then and Now Books, or Then and Now Comics. I could have said the words in the wrong order, but it was a well-loved comic book shop in Kitchener, and then the owner passed away, and so it happens, but it was within walking distance from my high school, and so my friends and I would go down and like look at book, read comics, pick up comic books, usually the weird stuff like Johnny the Homicidal Maniac and Lenore the
And
Cute
the
Little Dead Girl.
so what kind of what genre? Because I mean, comic books, people think superheroes, capes, bam,
Mhm.
pow, biff, that sort of thing, and it's so broad. I try to tell people like you could be super into comic books and
Mhm.
never read Marvel or DC and have
Mhm.
like a collection that is wouldn't fit in the library. So what was the genre for you in comics and even animation that you gravitated towards?
I'm glad you brought that up because that best describes the comics that I read. So it's mostly not superhero comics, although I do love them. Like I grew up, on the Spider-Man, the animated series, and the
I love
X-Men,
that show.
from the 90s,
Yeah.
but I also love anime and manga. So I went through like a really hardcore anime and manga phase in my like preteen and teen years, So I was really into stuff like Gundam Wing was a big part of my life. And also randomly I loved Card Captors, the anime. And but then I was getting into some indie stuff like as I got older, started reading comics like Bone, and then in high school we went through Mouse.
Mm,
Um, and then around that time, I started working at the local library and their graphic novel. This is what like the beginning of the graphic novel boom in that
mm,
era in the
right.
2000s. So I was reading more graphic novels and the ones that would be prominently on display. So there was Bone and of course Cerebus because Dave Sim lives a lot like nearby here or lives here. I'm not sure if he's in Kitchener or Waterloo. I've never met him, but there's always Cerebus there and Sandman and all those comics. And then the manga was steadily growing over time. So um, yeah, and to this day, my books are mostly indies and manga. Um, the latest books I've collected has been Akira,
Mm.
and I collect some Junji Ito here and there. And now at this point, I like to support my friends and colleagues in the industry. When I go to Comic Con and someone has a new project out, and I just want to pick up a book and support everybody.
Yeah, we got a great community for that. Like I didn't realize when I got back into comic books, um, and I started like there's things like Comic Cons. Like I got to all that late in the 2000s.
Hmm.
I was an adult already where I'm like, they're gonna come to Toronto and do a show this big and you could buy comics that much and you realize like Toronto is its own comic scene. Like we don't need people to fly from abroad to have a big show here. Like if
No.
just the local people or the people that are within Southern Ontario even,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Just Southern Ontario, you'll have like some of the biggest names in the industry ever almost at this point,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, that's true. I remember when I first broke in and like just working as a coloring assistant or a color flatter. Some of the names I read on the comic book blogs back when blogging was cool. Some of the big names, and then like I read about like Chip Zdarsky and Francis Manapul, etc. And then it's like, oh, I'm working for them. Oh, okay. How did that happen? It's um, just how, or oh, I'm like working for like some of the artists at Raid Studio. This is when they were back at College Street at the time, but like
Hmm.
just how fast that happened and how it wasn't just that, but it was just, oh, this is really a tight knit community. There's all these well known people, but it's like some parts of it feels like I don't know how to describe it, but it's um I don't know if welcoming is the right word for it. It's just there's some parts of it you feel comfortable or you feel like you belong with that group.
Hmm.
And it's like
Yeah.
yeah, I'm sure there's a word for it, but yeah, through my experience with GTA and Southwestern Ontario comics community, it's been very open and welcoming for the
Yeah,
most part.
I think you're right. They're I don't know if inclusive is the right word, if it's too much of a buzzword, but welcoming, including everybody. Like
Hmm.
if you make comics and you're trying to do this, come on board and let's all try to come up together. Like and everyone's doing
Yeah.
something different, right? And that's the
Hmm.
cool thing about it. Some people are specializing in Marvel and DC,
Yeah.
and then other people are You know, you got guys like Dax Gordine, but then people such as yourself, right? Everyone, and you run into, like, you're at a some of these get-togethers after a con, and it's surreal because you've got Donnie Cates, and then I'm there, and Ramon Perez is having a beer beside, Kevin Boyd or something. You're just like, this is so
Yeah.
weird that
Yeah.
I'm around all these, and then there's just some of us that are just, you realize we're all regular. It's just in my geeky mind, I'm like, oh, that's Jim Zub, and you know,
Yeah, yeah. I had that moment where like I had like that a moment with Jim's up. I'm like, kind of like starstruck moment,
yeah,
and it's kind of embarrassing, but at the same time, it's like, um, no, it's cool, and it's even all these years, I still feel like, how did this happen? But at the same time, it's like, oh, we're all cool, It's not a clash of egos or anything like that. Like, what's more common when you're working in the arts, I find,
right,
um,
right.
but it's more open and um, it doesn't feel forced at all. It's like everyone knows everybody, and it's like, hey, what's up? It's kind of like, again, I'm not finding the right word for it. But it's like a neighborhood sort of.
Yeah,
It's a community. There we go.
yeah, no, definitely, yeah,
Yes.
completely. Community is the right word. Yeah, and
Mhm.
where everyone's in the artistic neighborhood of some kind, and people such as myself who just podcast to want to talk about the art also get, hey, come along. This is, come to the show or come to this thing. So it's been great.
Yeah.
So true. What made you want to finally try your hand at creating? Because you got art, you said, in your family, right? What kind of
Mhm.
art did the family members do? Before I ask you one question before you answer another, but what kind of artists were they, or what line of art were they in?
My great grandparents, they did oil painting, so kind of like Bob Ross style of
Mm-hmm.
painting.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a couple of them here in the house, and then I found out we went to my mom and I went to the beaches in Toronto some time ago, and another one of my great grandma's paintings was there. Again, oils. So it's like, you see that we're kind of spread out all over the place here and there. Um, I think they lived in Aurora mainly growing up, but they were just mostly local. And my granddad gave art lessons and had an art frame shop. The building's still there, but it's not a shop anymore. So any knowledge, it's quite fuzzy
So this
of
wasn't
both of them.
just like a hobby thing. This was
Mhm.
people's livelihood being
Yeah.
involved in the arts. Okay,
Hmm.
so that
Yeah.
leads to the question I asked before. What made you want to choose comics when you had this other sort of legacy that you could continue on in the tradition of, but you stayed in arts, but you chose this medium?
Comics, when I was working at the library and I was at that point in my life where it's like, oh, I should start thinking about what am I going to do after I leave high school.
Mm.
And with all the books I had, and there was this one book, it was How to Draw book. I forget the name of it, but I followed some really outdated, it would be outdated by today's standards now, outdated advice where, how do you break into comics? And
Is it
when,
the Marvel one?
no, it was, I think it was a broad comics like how to draw a book.
Okay, I understand.
Um, yeah, I can't remember the title of it for the life of me, but no, it was broad spectrum, and there was like interviews with well-known comics people and people trying to break into the industry. So it was something that was published in like 2004.
Okay,
That's all I remember.
okay, okay.
But anyway, I was reading this book in 2010. And one of the advice was like, oh, to break into the industry, you can ask an artist if they're looking for an assistant. And I'm thinking, really? You can do that? So at TCAF one year, I did that. I asked around if anyone was looking for an assistant and eventually ran into Andy Belanger, who was at Raid at the time, and he was looking for a color flatter. So that's one way I
That's
got my foot
awesome.
in the door. And then before that happened, web comics were a thing, and I was just like, let's try it, see what happens. Let's see if I can actually draw and complete a story. And I set up my website with a lot of help and um, posted my first web comic from like 2008 until 2014, I think. And that comic is very much the awkward child. And um, I'm just like, oh yeah, that thing. Let's forget about it because like my drawings were terrible. My understanding of anatomy was terrible, and it was like I had gone from just mostly painting and drawing, like from art class or whatever, or being known as like the kid who could draw, to like relearning how to draw basically. Like drawing
Mm.
comics and painting are two completely different things, and not a lot of people realize that. So it was just I had to relearn, basically come up with my own style and things I thought I knew how to draw, and I'm like, oh, I don't know how to draw this. Like what made it hard was like you had to learn how to draw everything, right?
Right.
And a lot of people don't realize that, when drawing comics. So I just went headfirst into it with limited knowledge, and it was a very humbling experience. Um, and it just continued on over the years, just to see like how far could I push this? How far can I go making comics? And here we are now, I
I
guess.
think I love hearing these type of origin stories, because the one thing that's always the same link, like everyone's got a little bit of a different, how I started, I went to school here, whatever it might be, but
Mm-hmm.
it's that everyone did it in the sense of, I just made something
Mm-hmm.
and it wasn't great,
Yeah.
but I didn't stop making it. I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to see how far I could keep going. And in some ways, like when you talk to some creators, like Sean Daly, for instance,
Yeah.
like he learned at age 29 or something like that. He just started to see if he could do it. And it's like amazing things happen when you just try something that you've always wanted to.
Yeah.
Everyone gives themselves the trap door, the excuse of like, well, I'm too old, or well, it's,
Mm-hmm.
I got this. And it's just amazing the kind of stories people have to tell, because they're like, I just did it and I saw, didn't close the doors when some opened. So like for you, it was going to TCAF and just Andy
Mm-hmm.
Belanger needed an assistant. Now you look at Andy Belanger, he's gotten some big propers under his name, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's
And he's
cool.
got like, yeah, and he's got like a Kickstarter going on right now. I've been meaning to check that out, but like Mother Trucker 3 or something, I think at
Right,
this
right,
point. Like, yeah, that man's a beast. Like the detail in his artwork, it's always mind blowing. Like it was
right.
mind blowing back then, and now it's like, holy crap, man.
Yeah, everyone, you just see everyone getting better.
Yeah, exactly.
And in his case, for some of his own work, he became a wrestler for,
I know. It's
right,
like, how do you do both, man? It's just impressive,
right.
really. Yeah.
So as you were getting into creating your own comic, and you said it was very humbling, because you have the artistic skill, and you realize too, like doing this thing and this thing, drawing completely different. What was the
Mm-hmm.
best or the most humbling sort of advice where you realized, okay, I got my work cut out for me, but that advice or critique, I'm always gonna have it in the back of my head? Is there something like that for you?
I think the thing that stood out for me was learning, even if you have like the talent,
Mm, mm,
it's only a small percentage of success. It's a small percentage of the business. Like there was a lot I didn't know, and that included like marketing and sales and how to
mm,
present yourself at a convention, right? And like how to pitch a book, So it was just it wasn't just drawing. There was just a lot I didn't know about the comics business on top of that. And with humbling, went from being a proud, oh yeah, I'm an artist, whatever, and then am I an artist? Just this intense self-doubt
mm.
throughout the process. It was just like a deconstruction process, and then you're rebuilding on top of that. And I'm using materials that I wasn't quite familiar with. I've gone from watercolors to inking, and I'm like, I'm on one hand, I'm trying to use ink like I'm painting, and I'm like, this isn't working at all. So, and I'm trying to figure it out how to do it by myself. And also like my other insecurity too was that I didn't go to school for any of this, right?
Mm.
So what I would do at conventions, I would ask advice from various artists, and I would pick out the most consistent critiques um, people gave me, and I went with the most consistent feedback and try to improve and work on what I had to work on with my art and my characters and storytelling overall.
That's a great approach. That's
Yeah.
that's a really interesting way to like almost do a survey
Yeah.
and see who's not bullshitting me, but who's where's the consistency coming from? Who are the people who are giving you that advice? And I'm
Yeah.
gonna from there make the checklist. So what was it? What was that thing, for instance, that was a common sort of across the board
Um,
advice?
so basically, like, um, drawing like structures, buildings wasn't terribly good. And, and I'm thinking, well, drawing like blocks of stuff, that's easy, right? But no, there's perspective, there's scaling and sizing. That was another thing I struggled with too. I remember there was one point, to bring up Andy again, where there was like two people in a car and he's like, look at how small they are in the front seat. I'm like, oh, oops, I never noticed that, but he was right, the scale was all wrong. And he told me like, oh, here's the sites you go to for sizes. And that was when I um, got an interest in figurines. If
Mm,
I don't have a large collection of them, but I'm just like, oh, something like that would be helpful, like something that's in a car, something that's, and also looking at 3D models of stuff, just to
mm,
get the right scale of things. And what was another one? Drawing trees and grass was another one people had problems with. Again, with inking. And I'm like, oh, with watercolor, that's easy. But with this other medium, I'm like, am I ever going to get this right?
right.
So,
The classic.
and yeah,
Oh, go ahead.
sorry.
Go ahead. Keep going.
Oh, sorry. And also the other thing too, I switched um, the tools I was using. There was a lot of switching going on. So I move on from pen and ink quills to brushes to like, oh, here's this markers and pens, and this is a great brand. And I lost count how many products I switched over the years, and now I've stuck with mostly digital with my iPad.
Mm,
Um, and I still use traditional, and actually I've got like a watercolor piece I'm about to start over there for another project. But like, it's with this business, you've got to learn and adapt um, in this industry because there's a lot of changes and there's a lot of but then also there's a lot of cool techniques you can learn from other artists too.
mm.
One of my favorite techniques that I've learned is the splattery effect. So like you take an old toothbrush, you put it in the ink and splatter it on the page. That calls for the splattery effect. It's my favorite thing to do, and it's messy, and it's like I just love the effect of it. So yeah, it's like I don't have to worry about scales or drawing like the stuff I struggle with. It's like I can make splattery stuff everywhere.
Right, right. There's that freedom to just let it be.
Yeah.
Yeah. That classic, everyone brings it up, that imposter syndrome, right? That
Mhm.
self-doubt, that sort of, am I really doing this?
Mhm.
Is this legit? Because here I am at this thing, but well, when are people gonna find out that, how do you overcome that? Like everyone goes through it. Doesn't matter how successful the artist is, they all claim to have it. So what's your secret of overcoming it and reminding yourself, no, this is what you do?
Well, truthfully, I have not overcome this problem personally. I actually went through like a bad bout of it just last night. And it doesn't matter like the successes I've had so far in my career. There's moments where I'm like, oh man, like I've never been published by a publisher. Everything's like DIY. Am I good enough? It creeps up out of nowhere, man. But like what happens, it's usually like that, a bad night like that happens, but then like I fall asleep and then I get up the next day and I'm just like, okay, well, I'm drawing comics anyway. Just
Doesn't
I
change. It doesn't matter. I have to do this.
yeah. Yeah, it's in the blood, I guess. Or there's got to be a better way of explaining it, but it's like also a kind of madness for me. It's like I must do this. I must draw because I will be miserable if I don't do this. I will be miserable if I don't create, you know. And once I do the creating part without interruptions in here and the self-doubt, then it's like, okay, this is correct. This is what I should be doing.
Yeah, I think that artists that are even very successful, they say never kind of lose that little bit of self-critique, self-doubt, because it just
Mhm.
makes you work through it's like that workout, that resistance a little bit. And I
Mhm.
think what you just said is the ultimate answer. If I don't do this, in some way, shape, or form. If I don't create, I will be miserable. I have to
Hmm.
draw. If nobody reads my comic, I have to do it. It's the same reason I
Yeah.
podcast. It's like if nobody listens, I still have to try. I still want to do it because I feel better just
Hmm.
having the conversation. And if
Yeah.
one person listens, then it was worth it. I think
Yeah.
that's really the sign of you being an artist, right? You wake up and you're like,
Yeah.
that's what I'm supposed to do. Whether or
Yeah.
not I think I am, I have to.
Yeah. Yeah. That's all it is, you know. And if ever I find the answer to overcome the self-doubt, I'll let you know. But I've just kind of after last night, I'm like, man, this is gonna stick forever, you know? And
Yeah,
it's
I feel it was maybe like one of the guys from Raid, whether it was Ramon or Marcus
Mhm.
Toe, that said like once you conquer it, quit. Like
Mhm.
once you get, because you're not going to. I hope I didn't misquote them. If I did, I'm sorry. Could have been Mike Ruth or one of the other artists I see at panels often. But they're like, once you get rid of that, just you're not going to improve.
Mhm.
It's that thing of wanting to. No, I got to make that better. That
Yeah.
no one else sees the flaws. I know it could be better. I got to
Mhm.
correct it for me.
Mhm. You know, and funny you should say that because the thing that triggered the intense self-doubt was I was drawing a page and nothing was coming together. And it was just like you know, insert self-doubt and beating yourself up because, you know, it couldn't draw something that was so simple, but that's part of the growth process, you know. And then the next morning, or like today, I looked at that page and I'm like, oh, okay, so we're over this part and the annoying part of this page is done, you know. But you had to go through that uncomfortable part, you know, in order to get to the next stage, to get to the next step to make that page stand out even more.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's just, it is what it is.
Yeah, I think too when people are in the creative field of some kind, whatever it might be, a lot of times you've got to learn to I don't know what the right way to put it is, but like you're very precious about that thing you're creating. You've got a vision for it. You've been inspired. It has to be made now. And as you make it, but then you see like, okay, I guess that thing that I really, really liked at the beginning, I have to let go of in order
Mm-hmm.
for this thing to become better.
Yeah.
And those growing pains are very interesting to go through when you're like, man, that's the whole reason I started this thing, but
Mm-hmm.
it's just in the way now. Now it's
Yeah.
just bogging me down. Do
Mm-hmm.
you ever go through that?
Or, yeah, like I've lost count how many times I've had something that bogs me down, but then it's like once you get over it, you're like, okay, that process was supposed to happen, you know, and otherwise that's how you learn, you know, when
Mm,
you're creating. And you know, if you don't have those moments, then how are you going to get better?
right.
Right.
What in regards to things that inspire you to make the next page or draw the next page, do you have books that you look back on or animation you look back on, or are you inspired by something new? So when you go to the comic book shop or a friend of yours is making something, that new thing, oh, I got to make something. Like which one is it for you, or is it could it be both?
um what inspires me to make new stuff is it's so random. Like in here, it's so noisy. Like if I don't do
It's
anything,
it's
if
so funny because you're very quiet.
yeah, it's like there's so much going on in here, like I gotta let something out, you know. It's usually like, and what inspires me is anything in life, whether it's a book, a movie, or a show, or even just something as simple as a road trip, you know. And
Mm,
sure, I've got like favorite things to watch. Like I'll use like Mad Max Fury Road as an example, or I've got like a subscription to Shudder, you know, and I find one's inspiration there. But it's not like one specific thing where I'm like, I must create because of this one medium. It's a whole mess of stuff, you know.
right, right.
Yeah, I just don't know how to explain it, but it's just if I again if I don't make something like I'll go nuts. You know?
Right, right.
Yeah.
So do you have your if you had to pick, we like to do lists on
Mm-hmm.
this show a lot. A lot of our episodes are our top 10 things. So for you, what are for instance those top 5 graphic novels, since that was kind of your entryway into getting into the storytelling aspect. You have 5 graphic novels that you would always want to keep on your shelf. If you had to minimize, what 5 are you keeping?
Okay. That's a little bit of a hard question
It's
because,
very hard, but I think sometimes
yeah.
the first ones that come to your head, surprisingly, it's like, why did that come first? Like, why did I think
Mhm.
of that? So what are those ones for you? Like just the first.
Um, well, right now it's Bone, the entire
Yeah, the complete
omnibus,
collection.
the
Yeah.
complete collection.
Black and white or color?
I have the black and white,
I
but
do too.
I would love to get the color version someday. But if I just have black and white, that's fine.
Never read it yet. Shamefully.
Really, really,
No, no, I
you
haven't.
you have to read it. Like
Yeah.
I'm gonna have, yeah. Sorry,
It's
go
there
ahead.
on my shelf. Like I know it's one of those things that's meant to be read. I got the version, the omnibus one with everything in it,
Oh,
but
okay.
it's weird. I don't know if other people feel like this, but I feel like I've never read Mouse. It's on my
Hmm.
shelf
Hmm.
because I know that certain things, my frame of mind has to be ready to accept it, to appreciate it for what it is. If I read it at the wrong time, I'm not going to, I'm going to either be bogged down by everybody's praise. So I'm just going to read it like, all right, what's so good about this? But when you read
Yeah.
it with that openness, you're like,
Hmm.
oh, I got it. It's getting in. Like I just
Yeah.
recently read Preacher, and our
Hmm.
friend Shane Heron's like, just read it already. I'm like, I gotta be in the right frame of mind
You know,
because it's intense.
you said it in just his the way he would speak too. That's amazing.
Don't be ridiculous. Just read it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I feel like I am gonna read Bone. It's
Hmm.
just I want to read it with the right not attitude, but mood. I want to be
Yeah.
ready to laugh, be ready to be scared. There's a little bit of everything there, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So Bone for you.
Yeah, definitely Bone. Like I got it. Honestly, I got to get a eventually get a new version of the omnibus because there's like I was going through some pages and I'm like, is that pudding in there? Like there's stains in there from eating
That's
food and reading that
definitely a
book. Like
keeper.
it's embarrassing, but that's how many times I've read it. The other one's Uzumaki by Junji Ito. Like there's so much about him that I about his work that I love, but Uzumaki because that's the first thing of his that I read, and
Mm,
that was the first story of his that I read fully. And it there are parts of it that will never leave me, like definitely that one. And this one's hard because I can't just pick one book from this series. It's an entire series, but just to keep it 5 books, volume one of Akira. Um,
I want to get that set.
yeah,
I want to get the
it's
6 book set. Yeah, I
yeah,
haven't.
yeah.
Manga is a place I haven't. I know it's manga, but
Mhm.
it's not a place that I've gone yet because I'm terrified to fall in love with it because I know that if I
Because
do,
it's massive.
I won't
Yeah.
stop. And people
Mhm.
are like, "How do you not watch anime? How do you not read manga? You would like it. You like comics. You like." And I'm just like, it's not that I wouldn't like it. I don't think I
But
would leave the house.
there's so much of it. No, I hear you. Like I with manga now, I only collect anything that's finished or an omnibus stuff. And
That's yeah.
that's the big reason why like I've been collecting Junji Ito's works because they're contained stories and they're hardcover books. Like
Hmm.
that's a selling point for me. And Akira, it's only 6 volumes. Like
Right.
I will settle with that. And one more. I've only collected one full series of like the manga books, and that's Full Metal Alchemist. So I guess to answer to continue answering that question, volume one of Full Metal Alchemist, just because it's a special place right here. Or no, actually not volume one, volume six. That was the first one I read from the library.
I love that it's
Um,
a volume 6. That's
yeah,
great.
I
That's so
read
cool.
stuff. I read stuff out of order. This it bothers so many people when I tell them that, but
But
because
that's how people all read comics.
yeah,
Like when I was a kid, I was happy to get a floppy issue from the milk place where we bought milk, right? A spinner
yeah,
rack. And I didn't understand this story continues in such and such.
yeah,
I didn't know if I was ever going to see that issue. Like
hmm,
what are when are they going to have that? So you read the story
hmm,
and then somewhere down the line you picked up another book and you realize like, "Oh yeah, oh, okay, that continues. I'll
hmm.
fill in the rest with my
Except
toys." Right?
that's how I read comics. That's how I read them in the library because you rarely saw issue or volume one of anything. So you're starting like wherever. And that's where I mostly fell in love with. the series that I've collected, you know. And for me, Full Metal Alchemist Volume 6 is my go-to, you
Nice.
know. But it's the one where the Elric brothers, they're doing their training on this island, and it's just the both of them.
Mm.
Um, and that's when they're little kids and that. But it's like, again, my go-to. And then I guess there's one more book. Oh, this one's difficult. Actually, no, never mind. Calvin and Hobbes, like any volume of Calvin and Hobbes, just because that was the first comic I gravitated towards too, even though it's a newspaper
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
comic and so not horror. Actually, I think most of the comics I mentioned are mostly not horror comics except for Junji Ito. But like, um, but no, that was my. I still cherish it a lot, and I was learning how to read too, so that was the one where not only was I learning how to read through comics, but it was also like there's a character I could relate to. You know, there's a kid with an imaginary tiger friend, and I love the drawing style, and it was just fun. You know.
Yeah, I hear a lot of people, they might not be comic book fans from like the Marvel, DC sort of superhero stuff, but when they bring up
Mhm.
Calvin and Hobbes, it's very important to them. Like, you
Yeah,
gotta read Calvin and Hobbes.
yeah,
So again, another one of those things that I haven't tried yet, but it's
hmm
so iconic that it's one of those. Calvin and Hobbes is like, you've got Batman, you've got Spider-Man, you got Calvin and Hobbes. Like, there's
hmm
certain characters that are just iconic with the medium.
yeah,
Charlie Brown, things
hmm
like that. They don't need to be, and they don't always have to be childish. There's a lot of depth to them as well. So
hmm
nice picks. I like
yeah,
them. Very good. You were
yeah,
learning to read. Yeah, a lot of people learn how to read well
hmm
through comics. And I tell a lot of my friends with
yeah,
little kids, I'm like, your kids read? They're like, I want them to. I'm like, here's a stack of comics
hmm
and see if this helps. Because
hmm
it's that mix of mediums of using your mind to follow a story, which is very fulfilling to like, oh, that makes sense. To that makes sense. And then, oh, the pictures are telling me the action.
yeah,
And before you know it, you can't, the book is done. You
hmm
want more. So and the comic books can be quite articulate sometimes. I read some words there. I'm
hmm
like, people think, you got to be sort of a nitwit to want to read these books, but you get a good vocabulary reading comic books, man.
You do. It's true. It's true. I think like I remember in Bone there was the word omnipotent in one of the storylines, and it's like, oh, that's you know, not a common word people use, but it's one of my favorite things to do, like look up words on the internet and like see their meanings in that. I think I got that from reading Tolkien books. So that's a
Mm,
whole other discussion. Like we're
yes.
just gonna stick with comics and not just
We could talk
novels.
about anything you like. Don't worry. You like
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings? We could get into Lord of the Rings too.
Oh, I've gone back and sort of gone back in that rabbit hole of Tolkien. You know, that was the other thing, like besides comics, I was like huge into Lord of the Rings. Well, I still am, because that was around the time the movies came out in the
Mm.
theaters. But anyway, Tolkien had a thing that was like making up words and
Languages,
languages. Yeah,
song, like, yeah, what a world builder he was. It's
yeah,
unbelievable. Like the way when you read even just the Fellowship, because it's got so
hmm
much extra detail, Fellowship of the Ring, you
yeah,
think to yourself, like, does this place exist? The way
hmm
it's so developed, you feel like this is a real place, almost like George R. R. Martin, right? It's like
yeah,
they're really pulling from history. This happened. It had to have happened for it to be so detailed and like talk about continuity. I
yeah,
didn't realize I bought it. I remember during the Lord of the Rings movies,
mm,
the books and the encyclopedias and all the extra sort of things you can go along with it was at its peak. And I bought
yeah,
an encyclopedia that had like the history of all of Middle Earth through
hmm
thousands of years of it. And it just made me completely so much more enveloped when I'm watching the movie. I'm like,
yeah,
but you don't understand. He's really 80 years old. He doesn't say it in this because it's a cutscene, but he's half this and half. It's so
yeah.
cool.
Yeah, and I think it's why like with the Hobbit movies, I don't have a problem with them because it covers like there's so much detail in these worlds that like any bit they put in the movies, I'm like, I know what they're talking about, and I'm so happy. Even when people complain about them, I'm like, are you nuts? Like, this is a nerd's dream. These movies, at least for me. I've got a whole book about hobbits, like behind me somewhere, like just hobbits.
Will you
And
be
when
making
people,
a story about hobbits one day? Do you have it in your mind?
I don't know,
Not
like
hobbits, but like a Lord of the Rings sort of world.
honestly, I don't know if I could, not like exactly a Tolkien kind of story. I'm actually right now like uh, whenever it comes out. So like I'm working on a been working on a story for the next Cauldron like volume, not the upcoming hardcover edition, but like volume
The
5
next
or
issue, yeah.
yeah, of new stories. So it's the first one where I'm doing a significant amount of world building. So during this process, it's been taking me a long time, more than I expected, just because I'm just kind of getting lost in this world, and down the road, I would like to make more stories if, hopefully it's possible. But like actually just before we started talking, I was, one of the pages was sorry, that was just my mom knocking
No problem. No
the door.
problem. Hey, Mom.
Yeah, it's okay, it's fine. um but it's just getting lost in like, even though it's just one page, you're lost in this lore that you've made up, and you're thinking about the world you've created, and it's like, okay, so this is where this character comes from, and I'm like, okay, stick with the story you're working on now,
Mm.
stick with this now, because you can easily get carried away. um so yeah, it's been surprisingly more difficult than I expected it to be, and it's taken on more of a sci-fi route than I expected, more than fantasy. And of course some of the creepy stuff thrown in there, but I'm like, okay, we're going with it, we're going.
Yeah.
you
Sometimes
know
you just got to start, right?
yeah.
The first, like if I work in construction, so sometimes
Mm.
the hardest part is putting up that first piece.
Yeah.
It's like you just got, and then where we are, okay, that's where we started. Let's go. Let's see what happens. And then if you make a mistake, you got to backtrack. But
Hmm.
you got to start from somewhere. And it's cool that you had that inspiration from Tolkien, but now you're real
Hmm.
like, no, you know what? It's going to be this mixed with the sci-fi
Yeah.
and creepiness. And that's where
Yeah.
inspiration begins. Just begin,
Hmm.
right?
Just let it be organic and take its own life, give
Yeah.
it its own life. And it's like you see all the influences like mesh together. And that's where, when I was like telling you my go-to comics or graphic novels, and with all of it being from different genres,
Mm-hmm.
it does help with what you create, and
And it
it's
helps the readers too to like when we well now, oh, if that's what they're drawing inspiration from, I like to see what comes out of that gumbo. I'll
hmm
probably like what they're making, or I'll even see the influences. And
hmm
it's not as derivative or that
no.
it's like you're biting it. It's just like put that together, that's the meal you get from it. That's cool.
Yeah.
That's why I wanted to see, what are some of the things that you need to have close to you that you'll never forget what it made you
hmm
feel, so that it comes through in the work for sure.
hmm yeah.
Speaking of your work, you've got Gehenna, Death
hmm
Valley, the graphic novel. Right
yeah.
now, you're working on the
hmm
Wormhole Club tragedy,
yeah.
right? Let's
Yeah.
talk about Gehenna, Death Valley first.
Okay.
The inspiration for that, was it? You said it was you like taking road trips. Did it
hmm
start from a road trip?
it did. And then I have actually, I think I have it right here. Oh my
Nice.
goodness, I have actually something to show you. Okay, so I had these crappy masks, like they're from the dollar store, and look at this paint job right here. Like, it's not good, right? But I'm like, these could be like serial killer masks, right? Because it's so splotchy and gross and
Right, right, right. They're almost
not
like
even.
wrestler masks,
Yeah,
kind of.
yeah. And so,
Yeah. You found
yeah,
those at a dollar store
yeah. So
on a
like
road trip.
well, no, actually I
Oh,
had
okay.
I got these for Christmas
Okay.
years and years ago, and I painted them. Um, and I'm like,
Yeah,
wow,
the
this
painting's
didn't
not
turn out.
bad. I was gonna say that's not a bad painting.
Yeah, but no, it just didn't come out the way
Okay.
it wasn't even,
Hmm.
like so anyway, I made characters out of these three masks, and the idea popped into my head, and I think in 2008, but I slept on it because I was working on my first comic. And then finally, when I was done that project, the first webcomic, I started work on Gehenna Death Valley. And during that time, when I left high school, I went on I traveled for quite a bit. So when memorable trip was this road trip from here to Spokane, Washington, like within the span of 4 days.
So what? I'm Spokane is the Washington State.
Yeah,
That's a
Washington State.
drive.
Yeah,
God.
4 days.
Okay.
So, but it was so fun. Um, yeah, so that was
Big
like,
group, small group, just yourself?
yeah, just my aunt, again, the artist I mentioned earlier, Aunt Lori, and her mom, Eleanor, and it was just the three of us, and we were traveling with. It was for my cousin's wedding, or sorry, her hand fasting. Pardon me. And we were traveling with this huge wedding cake in the car, so that was interesting. Like we got stopped in what was it? So we went from Kitchener and traveled through the States, and then there was a large body of water that was in the way when we got to I feel stupid right now. I forget the name of the state. It's the one before Washington.
Portland,
No, no, that's
Oregon.
the one. No, it's there's Montana and then there's Idaho. Idaho.
Mm,
Okay, this is
yeah,
embarrassing. Hang on,
that's
hang on.
okay.
I need
Iowa, Idaho.
like I should know my geography, and this is
Oh,
super embarrassing. So, okay.
speaking of being embarrassed at geography, I was on the plane coming back from my last vacation. There was this game that you can play where they showed you a picture and then you just have to press on the map whereabouts that was. Man,
Yeah.
was I bad. I used to
Oh
think I
yeah.
was good at geography. I'm like, oh, I don't know where any of these countries are. I'm so stupid.
Yeah.
But have you found the route that you took, the lake that was in the way?
Yeah. So it was Idaho. Okay, so Montana,
You
and
got
we
it.
had to go up through BC, and then when we got had to go to into Washington State through BC. So through there, we were stopped, and of course, it was one of the stops where the Border Patrol had to open every single piece of luggage. And I remember my aunt was like, well, they opened the box with the cake in it. It was a fruit cake with lots of fondant icing, so it would last a long time. Like there's enough preservatives in there. But
Right, I was gonna say that's
anyway,
a long way to bring that cake.
yeah. So my aunt was like, "Do you want to stick your hand in the cake too?" You know.
Oh no.
Yeah. So there was that, and but it's okay. They let us go eventually. So I don't know what was going on that day. If someone
How
got a tip,
suspicious does your aunt and like
cake.
what?
I don't know. Just
I guess that's sometimes the ones that get through, the people who look the most innocent. I don't know.
yeah. Well, they were going through every single vehicle that day. It wasn't just us. Like
Okay.
there was a school bus behind us, and some. It looked like they confiscated a bag of carrots or something. Like it was
Okay.
hardcore. Like the you know
This was
whatever.
getting back into Canada.
Sorry.
This was getting back into Canada or going
No,
back
this
down to the
was
States.
leaving. This was leaving Canada again. This was
Okay.
going into Washington State.
Got you. Got you. Got
Yeah, because we got into Michigan. Okay, like there was nothing like that to that degree, but it was like, yeah, 2007 when this happened. So yeah,
you. Crazy.
yeah. So yeah, but anyway, yeah. So that was one trip, and then any other road trips I've taken lately, it's within Canada. So when I go back and forth from here to, I go to Ottawa a lot, but it's so fun. You like when you're on the road and you stop at all these various stops along the way, even on the USA road trip, and we had time to make all these stops in these strange places, and like, oh, this looks like fun. That was not fun. Let's leave. Oh, this is interesting. Like my favorite place was the Geology Museum in Montana, and it was like a very small uh place. Like it wasn't set up like a museum like in Toronto or anything. It was just a
Right.
small building, but it was like all the rocks, and you can see that. Well, now today you'd see them as crystals, for the
Mm.
mystic, the people who are really into crystals these days. But I'm just like, oh, that's a pretty rock. That's cool. Like I like to look at it from you know, a science perspective. But anyway,
Right.
I don't know if that played as an influence for Gehenna because they're in a cave and there's all these weird rocks and stuff they encounter at the beginning of the story. But yeah, just but that's what I meant by like it's not just books or movies, but it can just be traveling
Yeah, for
or
sure.
like experiences that um, influence whatever I'm making. But yeah,
So what I should have done is I should have asked you, give us the synopsis of Gehenna for people who may want to buy it, because you can go online to your site and get
yeah,
all these books. So tell us what Gehenna's about.
yeah. So Gehenna, I tell people it's like Scooby Doo goes to hell, except there's no dog. no Mystery Machine. And the monsters, people could see it like on the cover or art or whatever on my website or the books. The monsters are 100% real. So it's if you like body horror or horror, I used inspiration like from the 1950s, those movies with the giant bug movies, except like usually arachnid type of creatures, but make them into monsters, and just have fun with it. That's basically what I did with this story. So yeah, Gehenna Death Valley, I think I worked on it from 2014 until 2019. Yeah, 2019. But that one was fun. There was definitely like ups and downs with that one, with the creative process and whatever. But it was a much smoother process compared to the first comic, because it's like, okay, I've gotten more knowledge and experience now, and let's see what I can do with the new skills.
Right, right. What was your
Yeah.
first comic called?
It was called Cadaverific, and it's actually still on my website. I left it up there just because for anyone who's interested in like the comics journey, like with any creator, I loved looking this up when I was a kid, like seeing people's work evolve over time. And this is not just
Absolutely.
for artists, but musicians too. And then it just sounds
Right.
completely different from what their current project sounds like. So I left Cadaverific up and just to see like this is where it started. And then I've got like most of Wormhole Club 1 on there. And you can see like this here's how it's going. So it's kind of a comics glow up, I guess.
I
You
agree.
wanna-
I having read the Gehenna Death Valley series,
Mhm,
and then I moved on to the Wormhole tragedy, Wormhole
mhm.
Club, and I'm like, you can see the improvement, and it's
Yeah.
like I don't know if you've ever read Invincible, the Image comic.
Uh,
If you want to
yeah.
get in, you have.
I have not admittedly, but I
That's
should.
okay.
I know I
No,
should, but
up to you.
yeah.
If you ever want to get into like a really, and for the horror aspect, I mean, the fight
Yeah.
scenes in this in
Yeah.
Invincible, it's a great superhero comic, sci-fi, all that stuff. But
Mhm,
the reason I bring it up is you see how it's very much a DIY
mhm.
comic in the beginning, and it
Yeah.
just gets better and better. And Ryan Otley's art, by the end of it, you're just like, this guy can draw anything now. But I
Yeah.
remember when you could see some stuff like, well, maybe no, he's getting better. He's getting, and then at the end, you're just like, this guy's the best.
Yeah.
He's the best in the biz, and it's
Yeah.
so cool to see. Even just our, a lot of our friends, our peers who are making things and they just keep getting better and getting better. And there's no shame in having those older books
Mm.
at your table because I think it's true. When people want to follow an artist, it's like, I want everything. I want
Yeah.
the demo tapes, if you
Yeah.
will,
I
right?
love demo tapes. They're so fun.
Because you
Just
kind of look for the brilliance. It's like they don't got
yep.
it yet, but it's like there it is, there, right
Yeah.
there, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's the same with you keeping up all your stuff. I think that's great.
Yeah.
What did you So from Gehenna Death Valley, and now you're working on the Wormhole Club tragedy.
Mhm.
Do you draw from personal experience when you're writing these books and make it kind of like a cathartic thing, or do you um, just let the story unfold and let it see? And when you find yourself in a
Mm.
hole, it's like, I got to figure out my way out of this. What's the story?
Yeah.
How do you do it?
Um, both methods you described is how I make and create my work. So, with Gehenna Death Valley, for example, yes, it was very cathartic. Because what fueled that story was also my arachnophobia. So I'm
Oh,
making,
interesting. Okay.
yeah,
Very
yeah.
cool. So
So,
you do
and
you enjoy
yeah,
being scared since you like horror? Is that part
yeah,
of the thrill? Okay. Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Cool.
And also with watching like a lot of the horror influences for me are horror movies, and I love them so much because it's a cathartic experience for me. Because it's not a lot of genres where you can um, talk about like taboo stuff. It doesn't always have to be taboo, but it's like difficult subjects, and you can express it through this genre. And there's many subgenres of horror too. It's not just the slashers and everything, but like, and nothing wrong with slashers, like you know, but
What kind of horror do you particularly like? What are you drawn to?
I love monsters, body horror, and some psychological horror even. Like my favorite films to watch are like The Exorcist, even like The Exorcist 3. Um, And I also love watching the Italian horror films. And my recent favorites are X and Pearl. They're on Amazon Prime right now. But just watching those two together, like I saw X first, and then finally Pearl came on to Prime, and just watching them both together because they're part of a series. There's one more film that's supposed to come out, but it hasn't. There's not even a trailer for it yet. I think maybe a teaser. But anyway, so the newer movie elevated the one movie up so much higher, and you're like, oh man, this all goes together. This is so perfect, and
That's
I
the best.
yeah, and again, it's world building, right? And it's
Mm.
like, oh, I love this. This is great, And when I have time, I hope I can make some artwork from like Pearl and X. It's just it's really enjoy those movies so much. And then what else do I love? There's just so much out there. Like if it would be hard for me to answer what are my top 10 movies because it
Yeah.
changes all the time. But I've got
Yeah.
my go-to favorites.
Right.
But yeah.
So what is it about? I'm a noob when it comes to the horror genre. I just wasn't something I was even allowed to watch growing up.
Same.
Yeah. So for me, I missed it. It wasn't like my rebellious sort of, was this your sort of, if you weren't allowed to watch it, is this kind of like your way of being rebellious? Like, I'm going to
Yep.
watch it. See, for
Yep.
me, it was rap music. That was my sort of like, yeah, I can't say that. I'm going to say all the words.
Yeah. Yeah. So no, Halloween was like banned in my house even because like we got like the tail end of the satanic panic era in the household, so it kind of
Mm.
lingered a bit. And I think but
You're a
since like
90s kid, right?
yeah,
We're not going to give our age away, but you're raised in the 90s. You
oh
said you like
yeah,
Spider-Man
yeah, and
animated.
I'm
Okay.
like for me, age is just a number. I don't care, but like yes, I am a '90s kid,
Okay.
very much so. But yeah, so and anything like horror Halloween related was banned. But
Hmm.
as I grew up and I was like, oh, I actually like this stuff. This is actually really cool.
And nothing
And
crazy happened. Like,
exactly,
that
like
nobody came into the room and but I hear you.
yeah, yeah.
Was there
And
backlash when you would like just openly watch it like I like it, deal with it?
nope, nope, because I think like from that upbringing, there has been sort of a decompression or no, not decompression, deconstruction process with that strict religious upbringing.
For
But
yourself or like the
like
entire family?
everyone,
Yeah.
everyone. So, um, and that's like a whole other topic
Hmm.
going on. But it's like so with a wormhole club tragedy, that's the next cathartic thing I'm going through is like shedding that religious upbringing, even though like the characters are not me, but it's
Mm.
like what growing up with that and what the characters went through. It's like, oh, this is what you know it was like, in the evangelical with it, people who grew up growing up in the evangelical Christian, background and some of the beliefs that are still there, just the poisonous kind of doctrine, you know.
Yeah.
That
I
was
I had a similar upbringing. I don't have I don't practice it at this moment in my life, but I don't have like a angst towards it. I do have an
mhm.
appreciation for the way I was raised, and there's a lot of
Mhm.
value I find in like the community and certain morality that you get from it, certain values. But
Yeah.
I get that sense, the feeling of certain catharsis
Mhm.
and question asking
Yeah.
sometimes, right? Sometimes you
Yeah.
got questions that you don't want to be afraid to ask.
Exactly. And also what's been difficult, the most difficult part with like the wormhole club tragedy is like I'm kind of in a way I'm criticizing religion, but at the same time, I don't hate it, if that makes sense. Like if someone is devout in something, like that's their thing. I don't want to take that
Yeah,
away from them. Like,
yeah.
and there's like people who swear by it, good, if you're using it for good, good. It's just more of the poisonous side of it.
Yeah, and I
That's
and
more
I
what it's
think
about.
ideology is from any perspective in life, whatever
Hmm.
your is, when it becomes very like married to, and if you don't
Hmm.
think what I think about this,
Yeah.
if you don't think like whatever it might be, even if it's something you agree with, because there's a lot of stuff I agree with, it's just like, that approach
Hmm.
is it's just as much as what you think you're not. You're
Hmm.
doing the
Hmm.
same thing, right? So
Exactly. Yeah.
I don't know where, do you have an end to your stories before you, like at the beginning, do you know like this is how it's going to end, or do you kind of, I like that. You just let
No.
it see where it goes. I like that.
Just there you go. Even when I think I have an ending, it changes. But then I'm
Yeah.
just like, okay, let's just go with the flow. Go with the flow.
Because as I'm reading it, like I read the issue 2 preview that you sent to me,
Hmm.
and I'm like, is Becca upset? Like, is this a very personal story where she's just trying to let it all
Hmm.
out,
Hmm.
or is it autobiographical, or I'm not sure, but
Hmm.
I think there is a with the I don't know if the villain's name is, what do you call her again? The
Oh, it's Morticia.
Morticia.
Yeah, I used I love the Adams family and like I love Morticia Adams, so that's where
Right.
it's more like Morticia, but just switch the M with the V. So
Very,
it's
yeah, no, it
yeah,
works. Great
yeah,
name, especially because she
yeah,
causes these vortexes. But I feel
yeah.
like she is fighting, quote unquote, the good fight, but
Mhm.
becoming what she doesn't like. Like she's the villain,
Exactly.
right? So as
Yeah.
much as there's this opposing view to what you think is like, this is better to be this way, it's like,
Hmm.
well, she's kind of killing people.
Hmm.
Is, so it's, I think there's a lot of room for thinking to take place as this story unfolds, to kind of see where the balance is in things.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it. I'm happy that you don't have like an ending done, because you're allowing yourself to create. I think it's Mark
Hmm.
Waid, when they ask him like, how do you come up with these um, cliffhangers? And he's like, I don't know what the solution is. That's the thing. I'm figuring it
Hmm.
out as I do. Like, so if I write
That's what
myself
it
in a
is. Yeah.
hole, I got to come up with something, and I
Hmm.
got no choice.
Yeah.
So either one, think about, don't do something too crazy, but then two, you surprise yourself. It's like, oh, there's the answer, because I gave myself a difficult problem. So
Hmm.
I'm excited to see where your story goes now. That's cool.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, like this one is the hardest story I've written. So, but it's been a good challenge, and I'm happy that like well, the one thing about this project too that I'm working with an editor now, Drina Joe, and she's been a huge help with this process too. So it's because she knows what I'm trying to write about with the religious part of it, because she's familiar with that too. And it's like with that understanding, it's been really helpful with just would this make sense to the reader? Like I want while it's very niche, I think it's the way to describe my work. But with this particular one, I want a broad enough appeal where somebody who didn't grow up in that background would understand what's going on, right? So
Mm.
that's been the difficult part of it. It's like, will they get it when there's this part going on, but will they understand like without getting um, into too much exposition? Like, can they read it? What's going on with the art? Can they read the situation
Mm.
and so on? So um, but anyway, so far it's the response to issue 2 and issue 1 has been great so far, and I'm just happy with your comments on it so far. So thank you.
No,
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
it's exciting when you're in the middle of a story, because I
Mhm.
I don't feel that you can fairly assess, even sometimes comic series, right? This monthly, bi-monthly, however it's being published in a floppy issue, you get 22 issues.
Mhm.
We're so quick to, the last issue sucked, I'm not picking it up no more, right?
Mhm.
That's very
Yeah.
much, oh, you always got to be on point, or you've got to be writing a character that people are collecting
Mhm.
simply because it's the title and they don't miss an issue, whether it's good or not good.
Mhm.
But really, comics nowadays, there's a story to be told, and sometimes there's an issue that's going to seem like a filler because it just does some character stuff,
Mhm.
and that might be a low point, just like in a movie or a television show, but watch the whole thing,
Yeah.
right? Get to the end. So yeah, it's going to be cool to see how it all comes together. That's good.
Yeah.
What was something that you find yourself, that you like seeing in your work that's improved? Like, is there something like, I like this better now?
Um, Anatomy is getting better. And buildings, I don't get along with drawing buildings and structured stuff very well,
They
but
look
at
good though.
least
I
there's
noticed that. I have to say, the hospital, because the other one's in a cave, right? It's very
Mhm.
claustrophobic, Gehenna Death Valley.
Yeah.
Whereas this one now, I'm like, whoa, we're outside. We're in
Mhm.
cityscapes, and you did a nice job with the hospitals and all that kind of stuff. You did good.
Thank you. Those pages, like, so many four-letter words were going through my head as I was drawing those pages. It was like, oh, man, I'm like, this should be easy, but it wasn't. And then like the feedback that, from asking artists, like, what should I improve on? And, and they're repeating over and over again. But it's like, it does pay off in the end with the end result, because I
Hmm.
could rush it. And that's what I did with Cadaverific, just rush everything, and then it looks awful, or just take my time and make it look really good, so that it reads what it's supposed to read on the page, right? You
Yeah,
know.
I will say the one thing that I found harder when I was reading Gehenna, Death Valley, was some of the keeping up with the dialogue properly. Whereas in this
Hmm.
one, I'm finding everything is like all the positioning of the word bubbles. I'm like, this is becoming very
Yeah.
professional. It's looking
Yeah.
good. Yeah, so it's great.
Thank you, Sam. With the speech
Well,
bubbles. Yeah.
well, that's why I think like comic books, the collaboration of it is sometimes we don't give credit to how people position the dialogue, and all of
Hmm.
it is art in its storytelling process. So that's good. You got
Yeah.
the editor, you got the letterer, like you're committed to it,
Hmm. Yeah.
which long term is going to that book will always have a place on a shelf after, right? When
Yeah.
you know that you put everything into it. That's great.
Yeah.
What you also have the collaboration with Slam Tome Press. Shout out
Hmm.
to Martin on
Yeah.
his Dracula book and his next project that's going to be coming. I don't know if it's been announced yet or whatnot, but
Oh,
what was
yes.
that? It has?
Yeah.
Okay, the
Yeah.
Frankenstein now, which is, I mean, it's so cool to see a friend get into that. And then the way he put it together, you had a big part to play. Like you guys are often together selling those books and you're at cons now.
Hmm.
How was um, I mean, it's that book is got the cosign of the family, the Bram
Yeah.
Stoker family, and you've got a piece of horror attached to like one of the most famous horror characters. What was that like?
Mhm. It's like, is this happening? What? It's it's surreal. Like, and there's even, it's so easy to forget about that, even with the low points, and then you bring it up and it's like, oh yeah, that happened, dude.
You'll
It's,
forever be connected to Dracula.
yeah,
It's really
yeah.
cool.
So that's really cool. And I'm really excited about Frankenstein coming up. Actually, the watercolor piece I have coming up is for Frankenstein. So
Ooh.
it's, yeah, yeah.
We
So
can't get
as,
no previews, right? No spoilers. All right, fair enough. But look
not
out
yet.
for it. Look out
Yeah.
for it.
Like I've got the test page so far, and then it will go on the doing like the Bob Ross method, where apparently he made two or three other paintings before he painted his actual painting on the his show. I just learned this recently. So
Yeah.
it was like the practice round before
Yeah,
getting
because like,
to.
good gracious, like you just paint that. Oh, put a couple of trees here.
Mm-hmm.
Like you had to do some warm up. You don't just like
Mm-hmm.
that was incredible, right?
Yeah, it was the same method I used for the Dracula piece. I had like a test piece, and then I had a couple smaller pieces just to see like the watercolors I would be using would work together, and then I work with what I liked best onto the final copy. And I'm taking the same approach with Frankenstein, and hopefully it works with the idea I have in my head. So we'll see.
Yeah, I
So
can't wait to see it. That'll be great. What else can we look forward to to your work coming out? What have you been working on? Any other collaborations you got?
so I've got So through Keen Spot this summer, I think it's July 26th, they have a comic coming out called Rebel Girls. So I drew one of the variant covers. I think the pre-orders are still live on their website and also in the previews website. I'll provide the link when um, after this. And yeah, so that's exciting. I got another cover job. And issue 3 of the Wormhole Club Tragedy. I hope to have that ready by Fan Expo Canada. Let's hope. It's still in the writing stages right now. Frankenstein. And coming up this summer is going to be busy. And I haven't announced it yet, but I'll just say it here right now.
Woo!
So in June, we got Gotham Summer Bash. I will be there for both days.
Very nice.
Then
What weekend is that?
that's the 24th and 25th,
Okay.
I think. It's definitely, hang on, calendar. Where is it? Yeah, 24th, 25th, Saturday, Sunday.
Gotham
And then,
Central, right?
yeah,
Shout
Gotham.
out to Gotham Central. Shout out
Shout
to
out to
Carlos. Yeah,
Carlos and Gotham Central.
that's right.
Then in Kitchener, I've got the Punk Rock Flea Market on July the 8th. And August, 2 shows. Fan Expo Boston
Ooh,
from,
nice.
from the 4th to the 6th of August. And then Fan Expo Canada 2 weeks later. From the 24th to the 27th. And then October is Frightmare in the Falls. So that's the 27th to the 29th, like close to Halloween. And yeah, that's all we got so far. So
It's a busy summer. Good for
busy
you.
summer.
Have you been to Boston before?
Never been, so I'm so excited.
Do you enjoy Comic Cons?
I do.
Yeah.
Usually someone like me, like I'm usually an introvert and I don't socialize much, but like a comic convention, as long as I have a table and I'm drawing stuff and I'm with people I like to hang out with, like it's a good experience. Like the table is really a good buffer between like walking through crowds. I'd rather not be walking through crowds of people. Like I did that with TCAF recently this year, and I was like, oh man, I really miss having a table, just
Yeah, this Fan Expo is intense.
yeah.
Like I
Yeah.
enjoy Comic Con and all that kind of stuff, but I really do appreciate at this point in my life, having friends who are artists that say, "Hey, come take a seat," and I could just chill out with Shane or chill out with Sam, and
Yeah.
not have to go through all of that anymore. It's because it's hectic, and
It is.
for me, I start to get overwhelmed by it. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's but it's a great show. Anyone who's in the area, come and check that show out because it's one of like top 3 in North America,
I think it is. Yeah, I think I
right?
heard that too.
You got
Yeah.
San Diego, New York, Toronto Fan Expo or
Yeah.
Fan Expo Canada.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
gotta see it. It's awesome.
Yeah. Definitely got to see it, guys. It's one of my favorite places to go to, and the every year, and yeah, I'm really like every year I look forward to it. So, and I should have a new book out by then. Hopefully, everything works out good. But I think it will. I think it will.
It will.
So,
We'll make it happen. You gotta say it's gonna happen.
It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. Yes, positivity.
Are you road tripping to Boston?
It was discussed, but I'm flying out to Boston.
Okay.
So yeah, and I'm gonna be spending like a couple of touristy days there too. So that's
There you go. Why not, right?
It's a vacation too. So it's
Yeah, you gotta make most
yeah,
of it.
yeah. I haven't been
Where are
on
you
a plane.
going? What are you planning to see?
I don't know yet. I'm just I have an ideas, but I'm going with the flow, and I'm like, okay, it's still got some. Right now, I'm just focusing on I got to make stuff first before I do some more planning. But I've got the basics set for the trip. So
That's cool.
yeah. I hope I can see Salem, even though it's not Boston, but and I hope I can see the Edgar Allan Poe statue there in the downtown. But I also just to see Boston in general and like the harbor and maybe some whale watching, ideas of stuff, but just go with the flow. And if I can't see everything, that's fine. It's just I'm traveling somewhere finally after years of
That's great.
Yeah.
So for those that are in the Boston area that might be listening, make sure you check out the Fan Expo Boston. Becca will be there. In Toronto, Fan Expo Canada. I always thought Canada Fan Expo. Fan Expo Canada will be there, and you look out for the 3rd issue of the Wormhole Club tragedy. I have to ask, what did you win the award for? Tell everybody what the award for when the colorist award, the Joe
Colorist
Shuster.
Award. Oh, the Joe Shuster Award. Oh, so that was
right?
No, that was the Jean Day Award for like independent comics.
There you go.
Yeah, so it was for Gehenna Death Valley, and there was a nice surprise. So it was like 2020 happened, and then December, I was like, "Congratulations, you won an award." I was like, "What?" So that was super awesome, and yeah, it was great to get like good news in a year of like what is even happening.
Yeah. So whenever you got that imposter syndrome, you look at that Joe Shuster Award, you remind yourself, this is named after the guy who made Superman.
Yeah.
And I got an award in his name. So there you go.
Yeah. It feels good. I'm not gonna lie, it feels good.
That's
But
so
yeah, but plenty more coming, and yeah, I look forward to seeing people in the summer.
that's great.
Yeah, yeah.
Where can
And
people find your stuff? Tell them what the website they could go to.
uh,
Plug,
you
plug,
could,
plug.
all right, so you can go to thebecca.com where you can read my comics, new and old stuff, even the embarrassing stuff. All my social media is on the front page too. And yeah, I will be releasing the event schedule soon. I'm kind of making like a tour poster of it. I'm like, why am I doing this? Making more work for myself, but it's fun. It's fun. It's gonna have like sharks and ice cream sandwiches and everything. It'll be great.
That's awesome. That's so good.
Yeah,
Well, thank you so much for coming on to the show. I love talking to you. I hope you come back and
yeah,
we'll do just talk about Lord of the Rings if you want
yeah.
to.
I would love to come back on. Thank you for having me. It's great
No, it
talking
was
to you,
no,
Eric.
it was great. No, it's you're one of the few create not the few, but one of the creators that everybody says good things about, and they all seem to be
Oh,
true so far. So thank you for being as cool as you are, Becca, and
oh,
all the success to you.
well, thank you. And hope to hang out in the summer and stuff too. Like it
That
was great talking.
I was gonna say I hope to see you in the summer. Definitely, we're gonna see each other at Fan Expo, but we'll
Yeah,
run into each other this summer for sure.
for sure. Yeah.
So everybody that's listening, make sure you check out thebecca.com, all the social medias. She's easy to find. And for
Hmm.
those that are listening to the podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, whatever your podcast player is, don't forget to rate and subscribe and support and all that good stuff. And visit the omniversecomics.guide for reading lists, reading orders, reviews, podcast videos. All the good stuff is there, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to check out the Becca, and we will be back with more creator interviews, collector item specials, and our weekly live podcast. Signing off, it's Eric Anthony Becca. Thank you so much.
All right.